What's up, everybody? Welcome back. It is today, June 2nd, day 2 of Pride Month, if you will. Meaning that we are going forward with the canon Sonic EU relationship. Sonic EU is only valid in June, and being straight's illegal. So, there you go. Just kidding. Welcome back to the Hashira Half Hour. We are super excited to go forward with today's episode of the Hashira training arc. So, without further ado, I have my two friends with me.
Sonic EU is canon every month in my brain. That's it. Hi everyone, I'm Hannah.
Happy Pride Month to all who observe, including certainly the three of us. I'm gonna leave it there so I don't get canceled like these two.
Or you could also make the reference to Pride Month being Pride Demon. Happy Pride from your favorite demon, me. But nonetheless, we are talking about demons, maybe in a different format. But we have a lot to go through with this episode because this episode was mainly original anime content. So starting off, it's really cool how we get to see, every Hashira beat up on these trainees in a different way, yeah?
What were we saying when we were watching it? It's the child is beating up the adults.
It's like reverse child abuse. And he is so disrespectful about it. I think I also said, I was like, this is just me if I were to actually attempt to engage in a back and forth discourse with anybody from Gen Z online, I would get my ass handed to me. And that's exactly what Muichiro says.
He's like, if this were real, you'd be dead right now. I'm like, yep. Yep.
He's like, you'd have died like 3 times already by now. Exactly.
And then even after that, he's like, you'd have been dead again. And then it was like, again. And it was like, everybody. He's like, if you stop moving, you're dead. And I was like, damn. Like, this kid has some real talent, and obviously we saw that in the Swordsmith Village arc, but, like, it really shines in comparison, because we've been only seeing, like, the top tier of Demon Slayers for the entire time. We haven't seen the rest of the core operate since Season 1 with Rui's arc, so it's very interesting to kind of see the power level difference and, like, the power structure of the show. That's really cool. And then going forward, we get to see a cool scene, a really anime original scene, where we get to see Muichiro Kanamori is back, and we see Tanjiro with some paper airplanes. What did you guys think of that?
I think, like, all of us thought when Muichiro was like, take this sword, stand over there, face it towards me, we're like, is he just gonna, like, be like, alright, your training starts now, bum, bum, bum. No, that's not what happened, which is fine. I like the introduction back to Kanamori because I think that the Swords of the Village was really the first and last time we really got to know a lot of swordsmiths because, we're moving into the final arc, so there's not really much more time with them. So I like that they introduced him back as, like, Muichiro's personal swordsmith, just, like, sharpening his swords for him. He's just like, yeah, I'm living here now. I was like, wow. Must be nice to be a Hashira, just be able to take a person from the village and say, you're mine now.
Kind of sounds like slavery, actually. I think he was a willing captive. On that note.
Wow, we're really going strong.
Wow.
Today's
How
subject.
many times have we gotten
slavery.
canceled in this 5 minutes?
As Eliza Hamilton once said, I write against slavery, and I think that's what we're doing.
Free him. Oh, no. Okay, we need... Starting over. Let's take things back. Let's talk about the sword. I feel like that's safe. That shit is sharp.
Yeah.
It's like, and we knew that they were, and we knew that there was a reason Haganazuka was really upset that he'd only, like, finished the first stages of honing the sword in the last season. We didn't really see too much of the other swordsmiths actually working because they were kind of getting their world rocked, to be honest. So it's nice to see somebody other than Haganazuka, somebody a little more calm than Haganazuka, a little more willing to work with their assigned Demon Corps member, and to see, like, a finished product, essentially, too. Even if this isn't one of, like, the Hashira blades, and this is a spare blade, the fact that Tanjiro is able to hold it up and exert no force from his end, and only the force of a paper airplane flying, being sliced in half, shows you how incredibly sharp and how well honed this weapon is and how well practiced this person is as a swordsmith.
Yeah, all jokes aside, it was nice to see Kanamori. And we love Hakunezuka, of course, in this house, but it's a nice little added, like, calmness that if we're introducing another swordsmith, like, kind of back into the story, which this, of course, like we said, is anime original content, it's nice to, like, see him kind of be a part of this, and he's apparently very good at sharpening these blades.
Yeah, I think it's really nice to see like a relationship like this, especially since we know from Muichiro's last swordsmith that he was dying apparently, and so like it was kind of his last wish that his next swordsmith be someone that was going to be helpful and be there for him and really inspire him. So I think that this is definitely a full circle within a small arc, which is really nice to see as well. Moving on. As we've talked about with these other core members and how they're very different from Tanjiro, it is really, I guess, funny that they all are starting to pick up that Tanjiro knows the Hashira a little bit better than they all do, and they are kind of asking him for favors, if you will. They're trying to get him to be a little bit like more on Muichiro's side, as in like get him to tone down a little bit.
Yes, I don't think that's an easy task because this is who Muichiro is, and yet it's really nice to see the soft spot that he clearly has for Tanjiro at this point. Like, this is a boy, he's a child, and he's a sweet kid, but you really wouldn't know that most of the time because he's harsh, and that's probably good for this training, to be honest, because it's not like the demons are going to be nice to these recruits. So there definitely could be a balance here, knowing that a lot of these NPCs are probably not going to make it out of this fight, and who knows which Hashira are going to make it out either. They can all probably stand to be a little bit nicer to each other, and I think that's where Tanjiro can try to come in, but we've also seen that Tanjiro's way with words, when it's forced, is not always exactly what we want it to be, and we've seen that even in this season, so it's certainly worth a shot. Is it going to work against this Gen Zer? I don't know.
I like that Tanjiro is just like, he's kind of famous at this point, I think, you know. There's like the Hashira, and then there's Tanjiro. Like, everyone knows who he is, and they're like, hey, you fought with him, right? Like, can you talk to him? And it's funny because it's like, I mean, if anyone could get him to be nicer, it would be Tanjiro. However, like Emily just said, the Tanjiro effect only works when he's not trying.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely, except for maybe Giyu. Like, he was definitely trying with Giyu. But, like, any other time that we've seen, like, characters change because of, like, Tanjiro just being Tanjiro, it's because he's just being himself. He's not forcing anything. He's not trying super hard. He's just, like, that good of a kid, you know? And with Muichiro, like, Tanjiro wasn't even actually there when he really made the difference. It was a vision that Muichiro was getting. So, he could try. Muichiro definitely prefers him. The way his face changed, kind of like Tengen in episode 3. Like, the moment he noticed Tanjiro was there, he's like, Tanjiro! It's like, we all love him. That won't last.
I mean, who doesn't love Tanjiro? Come on.
It's on me, nobody.
That's a different story. We'll talk about that in a minute. But as we move forward, we see Muichiro leave for the night. But we see Muichiro in a different POV than we're used to. So we see him running. Why are you running? And then we see him through the POV of some eyeballs. And we start to hear the biwa strum. And then we get a really cool scene of a bunch of eyeballs. Which is an anime original scene, by the way. This didn't happen in the manga. So what did you guys think of this? And how did you think it was executed? Or how well do you think it was executed?
It was really creepy. Just, like, the way those eyes are animated is super creepy, and I was not expecting them to, like, go down the alley and see, like, hundreds, if not thousands of them, which I think is interesting. I'm wondering how they're making that work. Is, like, that's just how many eyes there is roaming, and they happen to all be in the same place at once at that point in time? I don't really know. However, I watch a lot of reactor channels, and a lot of the reactors I watch, when they saw the eye that said 4 in episode 3, they thought that Han Tengu was still alive. So at least we've got that question answered now that it's not Hantengu. So if you are an anime only and you thought it was Hantengu, don't worry. They're not trying to like throw us for a loop and have him still be alive, because that would suck. He's dead. He's gone. But we do have a new 4, and we've seen her before. And her ability, while we don't really know much about it, seems pretty scary, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think it was already intimidating when we first saw her at the... Well, we've seen her a few times, but one of the times we've seen her most active was at the beginning of the Swordsmith Village arc with the Infinity Castle and, like, the control that she has over the environment. So this is a new ability that we're seeing from her this season, and they really, really took this concept of, like, Muzan having eyes everywhere to another level.
Yeah.
And that would explain some of the instances we've even seen in season 1, where it's like, how would he even know if somebody's talking poorly about him? Like, there are literally eyes everywhere. And that's kind of scary, but it also, I think, really emphasizes how well Nezuko must be hidden, because we know that that's what they're looking for.
Also, I'd like to call out that they made a Junji Ito reference in... do we know the name of this character yet? I mean, we know it in the manga.
No,
but...
they haven't said it in the anime.
Okay. Well, this demon that we know who, of their hair is very specifically, like, drawn out to be extremely long, very similar to what was in, I think, Uzumaki, where it started to curl. And so I just wanted to call that out really quickly. I thought that was really cool, and I thought that, you know, it might be a reference, it might not be. In my head it is. Alas, but we see Muichiro running, right? And where he's running to, now some of the Slayers in the Corps have talked about how they've noticed bruises on him, and where he's getting them, well, of course, from his fellow Hashira. So, with that being said, we find out that we first see Sanemi and Obanai fighting, which kind of reminded me of Entertainment District. That was so cool.
It was really beautifully animated, as always. This season is not going to have a lot of big fights, at least not that we're aware of at this point in time. We're gonna have to probably wait, and I'm sure they're reserving a good amount of budget for what's to come, but like, this sparring is what we're gonna get, and so I like that they took it to this level to watch these two fight. And they told us that they were going to last episode, so it was nice to see that actually pay off.
I felt the same thing when I was watching, at least when Muichiro jumped in, when they were showing them, like, not actually being able to see them, but they were all kind of, like, bouncing back and forth, and you could see, like, their breathing styles, but not them. That reminded me of Gyutaro versus Tengen, which is, like, kind of widely known as probably, like, some people call it the peak of Demon Slayer. I don't think that it's the peak, but it was one of the most well-known fight scenes in the show. So I really, really liked that they added this in. It's fun to see these Hashiras sparring each other. I think that's something that's so, like, such an interesting thought that I've been thinking of since the beginning of the show. Like, how cool it would be to see the Hashira fight against each other to practice. So getting to see that here now, and understanding that they're kind of doing their own side thing, because the training of the Corps is not actually doing what they were hoping for them, because they still have to learn too. They need to get stronger before this as well. So, because we know that they're going to be the ones that are facing, you know, the difficult demons like the Upper Moons and Muzan. So, really, really enjoyed it. My only issue with it was that it was too short, but
Alas.
They're just showing us a little sneak preview, I think, of what the future holds.
Just a sample.
Their tatakae must be improved, as Aaron would say. While we have all three of these Hashira together, now we have a funny moment where Sanemi's like, talk about refusing to die. Which I'm dead at. This man needs to stop. He needs to stop hating on Tanjiro.
Like I said earlier, everyone loves Tanjiro except for Sanemi and Obanai. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, every time we get to new Hashira right now, they all get very excited to see Tanjiro. That's not gonna last. He's gonna get to Obanai, and it's just gonna be like, I'll kill you, right? No, that was just such a funny line for Sanemi to say. Like, what did he say exactly? Like, talk about stubbornly not dying or something like that. It's like, are you hoping this kid dies? Like, Sanemi, you might not like him, but he's still a member of the Demon Slayer Corps fighting the good fight. And then Obanai's like, so he'll be completely recovered by the time he gets to me? Then I'll be thorough with him. Okay. Dramatic.
Wouldn't be Demon Slayer if Tanjiro didn't go to the hospital at least once every season. Oh, man.
Poor buddy.
I can't even, like, try to argue in their defense here. I'm like, maybe they could be talking about the fact that he is always in the hospital. And they're like, this kid, like, not that it's bad, but he just literally won't die no matter how many times this happened. I don't know. Hannah's white-haired meat is, the biggest hater.
I never called Sanemi that. I just called Tengen and Gojo
But is he kind of beefy? I was thinking he was a little thick.
They did. Twitter is blowing up right now with just close-ups on his
breastus for the restus.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
UFO Table is genuinely like starting to give us the fan service that
The Vappa treatment.
that's what I was gonna say. It's like the fan service that JJK was giving us in Shibuya. They're like, oh, all the girls went crazy. We need those girls to go crazy over our men too. Sign
Women
me
control
up.
household purchases, including
Literally.
anime figures
Yes.
of men with big breastises.
No, actually, fun fact. I'm so gonna expose you, Emily. Okay, so Emily set a problem up for herself later because she bought some looking up figures of Chopper and Luffy. And so, girl math equals, if you're on pre-order, you don't have to pay for it right now. So technically, it's a later Emily problem.
This is not where I thought this was going.
Nope.
I'm fine with this. We're good.
I had a different thing in my head.
Me too. Probably the same thing.
Oh, I have no idea what they're talking about, but I'm sure we'll talk about it off camera. Maybe it'll be our Taisho or a secret. Who knows? No, apparently not. Cool. Well, after this conversation, they finally get back, right? So Muichiro is done sparring with his fellow Hashira. We are back at his, I guess, mansion, if you will. And then we get back to it, and they're back at training, but Muichiro doesn't feel right. He says that it is not intense enough, and he brings out some real swords. And this is kind of like jarring for the entire audience, including Tanjiro.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely a little bit surprised too, because it's like, look, like, we know that you don't like everybody, but are you actually gonna kill this kid? And I'm like, I genuinely don't know, but like, and nobody did in the room, including Tanjiro, and it's like, oh, like, if they actually do, like, this kid's at minimum losing a limb.
Yeah. That was so funny. I'm sorry. The way he was like, go get the real swords. I was like, bro, you being like those Blue Lock characters I was talking about, just overly dramatic. I would have been Tanjiro in the background, just like kneeling down, being like, hey, like, you're a good kid, but like, what are you doing? You could see it in his face. He was just like, should I be like trying to stop this? Is this the moment I step in after they asked me to like let him be lighter on us? Because now he's like literally threatening to freaking kill them, essentially, because they're not living up to his training. I was like, all right, Muichiro. Also, this was anime original.
Yeah.
Well, we do get some resolution in this moment, which is really actually very sweet, because Muichiro reveals that he's like, because the kid drops to his knees and he's like, I can't do it. I'm sorry, I'm trying my best. But he's like, it's because I don't want you to die. And I was like, okay. And then he's like, I want you to live a long and happy life if possible. Like, I want you to be able to do well through this, and I don't want you to get devoured by a demon. So, like, we gotta pick up the pace here, kid. And it was really sweet.
It was sweet. But could that point have been made without forcing this kid into thinking he was facing certain death? Perhaps. But again, to like play the devil's advocate a tiny bit, like, are any of the demons gonna care about
Right.
whether this kid is too afraid to fight them? Like, absolutely not. So I do agree that there's an element of tough love that is present in all of this Hashira training, and that's arguably needed to whip these people into shape as quickly as it needs to happen. But he is a softie at heart. So I wasn't necessarily surprised that he didn't actually do anything.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, his decision to do that, I think we can all sit here and be like, we know this because we've all worked in the training environment or are still working in a training environment, where just because someone's super good at something and super knowledgeable at something doesn't necessarily make them good at training it or teaching it. You have to have a certain set of skills to be able to train. Muichiro, at the end of the day, is only 14 years old too. So he's really, really good, but while it seemed like he kind of knew what he was doing here, I don't think he ever thought anyone would actually try to fight him with a real sword. And it kind of forced this kid into some growth to kind of understand, like, okay, maybe I need to know when I should not, right? But at the same time, it could just be that Muichiro, while he's very good at sword fighting, he's not the greatest teacher.
Yeah.
Alas.
Any of these Hashira.
The truth of training. And as we were watching this, I was like a little upset at first because I was like, don't tell me we're just going to skip to Tanjiro passing this entire training without a fight scene. And then we get the fight scene, of course, and it's Tanjiro versus Muichiro. What did you guys think of this? Because this was quick, but it was still well executed.
Very well done. It kind of reminded me of like Tengen versus Tanjiro in the episode prior. Just like, while there's no breathing styles being used, just the movement of the animation and like the intensity of it, it's really just an enjoyable moment in the episode. And I love how Muichiro was smiling as well. And I keep calling back to episode 3, but it's because Muichiro and Tengen, I feel like, are very similar. While like Muichiro, just like, that's like practically his big brother because he's younger than him. And then Tengen, it's like, it's his son. Both of them are proud of him in like different kinds of ways based off of their age, but both of them, when they fight him, are smiling in a way where it's not like they're necessarily playing with him. They're just like, wow, like, I'm really proud of how strong you've become. Mm-hmm. And it takes us all the way back to the beginning of Swordsmith Village. And we talked about this when we met Muichiro in Swordsmith Village in episode 2. And none of us liked Muichiro. And he was like calling Tanjiro super weak. And can't believe someone like you is even made it into the core, let alone is still alive, right? And he's just like, Tanjiro, like, you're getting a lot stronger. And again, Tanjiro was able to hold his own against Muichiro.
Yeah. And I think something that stuck out to me in this episode was the fact that we got to see Muichiro spar with quite a few different people. So ranging in skill level from, you know, these NPCs that are going through the training alongside Tanjiro, all the way up to Hashira like Obanai and Sonami. So it was interesting to me that it seemed like, at least in what we were shown, the only person that could keep up with Muichiro was Tanjiro. Mm-hmm. And that's a feat, because even with the wooden swords and even with the training environment, I don't necessarily think that Muichiro would intentionally go easy on him. And I'm sure at minimum the speed was probably on a similar level, if not animated exactly the same way that the night training sessions were going. Tanjiro totally deserves to get to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, him passing within 5 days and the way he was like, are you sure? And he was like, yes, you've mastered everything that I've asked of you. And I was like, aw, Tanjiro.
With the little flowers around his face.
Yeah, it was so cute.
So cute.
Oh my god. So it was very funny, and it was very sweet, because it was like the one brain cell moment again, immediately following, as Hannah would say. Because as soon as he finishes, he remembers his duty, right? Of trying to get them to get Muichiro to lighten up just a little bit, because he is leaving behind some people, right? They've been there for 2 weeks now. So looking at it, he challenges Muichiro to a paper airplane contest. And they did not need to go so hard on this paper airplane contest, because they went ham on this. What did you guys think of this entire scene?
I thought this was absolutely adorable. We don't get to see these children be children very often. They're forced into like a really cruel reality, and that's what we've seen 90% of the time. So any moment that we get to see them be kids, or enjoy a fleeting break from something is really endearing and heartwarming, and especially for Muichiro, I think that it's really easy to forget that this is like a 12-year-old kid and that he has a hobby like making paper airplanes and flying them, because it's just not the first thing you would think of. And I actually was almost like a little bit melancholy seeing his like swordsman working in this studio and making all these swords for him, and then he's like, oh yeah, when he has some downtime, this is what he does, and it's a massive pile of paper airplanes. And it's like you just wouldn't look at him and even think that that's something that might even cross his mind, but he is still a 12-year-old kid. And so as much as he's focused on this Hashira training, and as much as everybody wants to pass and obviously improve, it was really refreshing to see them all take a break and kind of play.
You took some of the words out of my mouth. I was thinking about just how we forget when we watch this show that they're kids, because they're as silly as they can be. They are very mature, you know, and they have been thrown into this world of fighting for their lives every other day. You know, we joke that Tanjiro's always in the hospital, but that's like his reality as a 16-year-old. And it's not because he's just like in a sport where he's constantly, you know, he's just a little bit more brittle than others. It's because he's going up against these incredible foes where it's just like you said in the last episode, you hear something and you've already been hit. Like, there's no way around it. And the fact that he's just surviving is a feat in itself. So to see them both just get to be kids was like, it brought a tear to my eye, honestly. And I also really loved that at some point during this training time, Tanjiro was genuinely asking Kanamori, like, what does he have a hobby? What does he do? And it was probably because he was kind of listening to what those Slayers asked him to do, and he was thinking of ways that he could try and like get through to Muichiro to make him go a little bit easier on them. But at the same time, he's just like, does he have a hobby? Like, what can we do? So I joke that he made the one brain cell face because they animated it exactly the way he offered the soba contest to Giyu. But he's actually thinking pretty hard. He's covering all of his bases to try and get through to Muichiro for the sake of others, because he was doing fine. He was doing fine in the training. He got through it quickly. Muichiro was never mean to him. It was for everyone else so that they could, you know, maybe get through it, honestly. And it was really just so sweet. And then the music's playing and we're just sitting on them smiling, and I'm just sitting here like, I need to enjoy this.
Yeah. And so, unfortunately, Tanjiro loses in this paper airplane contest miserably.
So funny.
Because it was like 5 in a row, and they really like focused in on that because they wrote like the big kanji for defeat right in the center of the screen. And I was like, perfect. Love to see it. But then everyone else chimes in. And this felt so grand, and this felt so big. It felt almost kind of like a Miyazaki kind of film kind of moment where it was like all of these beautiful paper airplanes. What did you guys think of the rest of this scene as it like kind of closed the episode?
I think we're going to kind of see that, maybe not. I haven't been good at predicting how they're doing things this season, so maybe not. But like last episode and this episode, every time he like moves on to the next one, there's a lot of feeling of like, I don't know how else to describe it other than like grandness. You know, Tengen was like, you can move on, and then he was like, we defeated an upper rank together, and the music that's playing is very like beautiful music, and it feels very happy and stuff, but it also feels like there's still something looming over us, you know, like we're happy, but like we got to do this because of what's to come, right? And that's still how I felt this time too, is that like they're smiling and they're happy, but we just keep getting reminded of that this is the build up for something, you know, like that's why they keep introducing the 4 demon. We know that like they're watching us and stuff, so we're getting these moments of just enjoyment, and it's almost like it feels like it's coming to the end of a show, like we're getting a happy ending, right? we're watching these paper airplanes flying to the sunset. And it's just...
The chip man is here.
The who?
The chip man.
He sells chips?
Nice. Anyway, it's just, I don't know, it's giving me the sense of, like, ending.
Yeah.
So it's, like, bittersweet.
I would agree with that. It's giving the illusion of a happy ending, and I'm not going to say whether the ending will be happy or not. It's too far off for us to be able to, like, really have a good grasp of the situation, but this moment feels sweet. Again, it's nice to see, and because these kids are also probably, like, very similar ages to everybody else that's seen on screen, and as much as we keep calling them NPCs, it's like these are all children that also have, like, their own lives and their own reasons for being where they are and their own desire to get stronger, and they all get to be kids for a minute, which is really pure and sweet. And yet, some part of my mind could not help the intrusive thought of thinking, like, I just wish this was underscored by a slightly different song. If you will, can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars? I could really use a wish right now. A wish right now. A wish right now.
My wish is that this is just the end of the show.
This is like Attack on Titan when they make it to the beach. We're just gonna pretend the show ended there.
Just gonna close the laptop.
Okay, well, with that out of the way, there's one other thing I wanted to address, which we did see, and Orokutaki is watching over Nezuko again. What a sweet reunion.
Oh, I loved this. He is so proud of both of them. He was her protector for a long time while Tanjiro was gone. He's the reason that she kind of is the way that she is, with his, like, gentle persuasion while she's sleeping, making sure that she is not interested in consuming any humans and in fact sees them as all of her siblings. He's responsible for a lot of what's happened here. Literally as well, because he has sworn that, like, if anything were to happen with Nezuko, that he would take his own life as a result, because he believes so strongly in these two and has so much conviction. So I loved getting to see him play a role. And let us not forget that he is also a former Hashira, one of the only other ones that we're aware of that's alive presently that is also retired. So this is his way, I think, that he can attempt to contribute to maybe not the Hashira training, but this arc that is inevitably happening, because Nezuko needs to be protected as well, and potentially to, like, train a little bit. We saw her asleep, so who knows what's going on there.
Gyu was the first to believe in the Kamado siblings. Orokutaki was the first to approve of them and take them and say, all right, like, I'm gonna actually get you to a point where you can fight, you know? He is very important to the Kamado siblings, so for Tanjiro to... First of all, the conversation with him and Muichiro was really good. Again, anime original. I really liked that they added this, because I think a lot of people have been wondering where Nezuko went. She just kind of disappeared after episode 1. So to kind of have this check-in and see that she's been moved to somewhere safe, which is a good idea, because as we know, the demons are watching. They're finding some of our slayers, and she needs to not be there, because if Muzan gets a hold of her, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally over. He would become immortal and the world would be doomed, you know? Including us today, because he would figure out a way to get to America. Like, for now, he's condensed in Japan, at least.
Bro hasn't walked the streets of New York City. I don't think he'd last 5 minutes. First off, okay, wait, hold on. Let's imagine Muzan in present-day New York City. First thing sets foot, it reeks. Manhattan is not a scent-friendly place. I haven't been there, but I've heard, okay? Second, you've got friends and all of the issues of whatever's going on. Then there were so many things wrong. I just don't think he survives 5 minutes in New York City.
He immediately gets stopped by an influencer. What do you do for a living?
Oh my god, Billy Eichner on the streets. Do you know about Dua Lipa? Who's Dua Lipa?
Oh, Lord. Anyway.
Have you seen La La Land?
What are your thoughts on Michael Jackson?
The worlds collide. Oh my god. Anyway, I'm going way off the question, but that whole scene was just very, like, I keep using the word intentional, but everything that UFO Table is adding, it has been very intentional. That one especially. Introducing us back to Urokodaki, who is probably my favorite side character, honestly. And Tanjiro having that conversation with Muichiro, seeing that he's, like, understanding that even though he promised he would always be with her, he knows that he needs to not right now. Because not only to protect her, but to protect literally humanity.
Yeah. And then lastly, after the credits, we get something a little bit happier and something that's really near and dear to my heart. Because Tanjiro is moving on to the next Hashira, Miss Kanroji Mitsuri. So, as soon as he shows up, he gets pulled inside. He's like, we're going to have pancakes, we're going to have sweets, we're going to have butter. And Tanjiro has no idea what any of these things are, which is absolutely perfect in my opinion. So that was really cool to see. I love Mitsuri in every shape and form. And so really getting to an entire episode about well, it's not, because the end of the episode, we see that it's going to be about, the title of next week's episode is I Even Eat Demons. Who could this be about?
I wonder.
So first of all, I just want to say the fact that Tanjiro doesn't know what butter or pancakes is really freaking adorable. And it's not something we even think of. And I'm like, you know what? He's a little Japanese kid that grew up in the mountainside. And this is like Taisho era Japan, when Western society had started to kind of infiltrate, but probably not to all corners of Japan. So it's like, he doesn't know what this like Western food is. He's like, butter, pancake. And I'm like, oh, and he's like, I'm just learning what black tea is. Like, oh, sweet boy doesn't know what pancakes or butter is. What was the second part of what you were talking about? Oh, the name of the episode. Yes. I don't know what to say without spoiling anything. Can't wait. I'm excited to see Genya again. We haven't seen him since episode 1, and he's really probably one of my favorite characters. So, with that, we know obviously he's the one who eats demons, so we know he's going to be reintroduced in the next episode. Very much looking forward to that.
Rest in peace, Tanjiro. You would have loved IHOP. He ain't dead. We're just thinking about him.
Well, I mean,
we don't have to talk about it.
Yeah.
He would have loved IHOP. Love that for him. They're so cute together. Don't know that it's exactly the best diet that's conducive to like intense physical training, but perhaps it's fine. Who knows? He needs to eat his soup. But on the Genya note, or as I like to call him, Genma, lest we forget, I am excited to see him. We love America breathing in this house. Not doing it, just watching it. Just watching.
Well, he's going to be back again, yeah. So, with that being said, do you guys have anything else before we can move into where the manga adapted?
Do you want me to just talk about it? I've already like done my reading and stuff.
Go for it.
So, fun fact, when I watched this episode, I thought it was the same amount of adaptation as last week's. It was actually quite a bit more. It was more than twice as much. And we adapted 4 pages.
Wow.
And not 4, 3 and a little bit more. But surprisingly, half of what was adapted was that Mitsuri scene.
As it should.
Let's go.
So,
the queen has her moments.
Essentially what happens in the manga is Tanjiro arrives and it instantly goes to them fighting and Muichiro telling him that he's good to move on to the next one. So everything before that, which was nearing the end of the episode, was all anime original content. And then it just had their little conversation, but it ended with the other Slayers saying the difference between us is incredible. So like that paper airplane, as we established, was all anime original as well. And then we go to Mitsuri, which this was pretty much word for word the same, but the whole page was that last little minute long with Mitsuri. So now, based off of the name of the next episode, I think this is the last episode we're getting this kind of pacing, because they do have to pick it up. Mm-hmm. They have to. And I think we're going to finally finish chapter 132, but we'll see.
Well, only time will tell, which means you're going to have to come back next week to see where we land with that. But let's go ahead and get into our favorite moments of this episode. I'll go ahead and start. My favorite moment had to be the entire like panel of paper airplanes and just like all of them being thrown at once. I hope I didn't spoil anybody else's favorite moment, but I'll keep it short. It was just so cool to see like all of them throwing them at once, all of them building them together, and like all the different shapes that they come up with, and like it was just so pretty to see like everyone throwing them all at once. It felt very like symbolic of like the fight that everyone's putting in, or the tatakae they're all putting through.
I think that is probably the best moment in the episode, so I'll just back that up, but then I'll pick something different. I do think it was probably the nighttime fight scene between Sanemi and Obanai and Muichiro. It beautifully animated. I think it was one of the most eye-capturing scenes, and of course it definitely harkened back to Entertainment District, and for me even a little bit before that, because the first time we saw some flashes and unable to see the two people fighting was, I think, Rengoku versus Akaza.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite fights.
Mm-hmm.
So I love seeing the flashes of color and the movement that's so rapid that even we as the audience can't fully partake in what's happening.
Yeah, it's showing us that they're moving literally faster than our eyes can follow, which is crazy. Both really good moments. Special shout out to all those. While I did enjoy Muichiro versus Tanjiro, I have to call it specifically because I didn't mention it even though you did, was Tanjiro getting defeated in the airplane. The way he was just, every time he lost, his face got more and more like, he started off, he's like, I can beat you once. And he's like,
so sad.
It just like changes, and then finally it goes to him like on his hands and knees to defeat. Like, I'm defeated. He's like crying. And I've already seen people use the picture of him going like, with like tears streaming down his face. He was pointing one because he had one more go. And I won't talk about some of the memes that I saw because it was kind of mean, but it was really, really funny and very dramatic of him. He's my favorite little drama king too.
Small bean.
He can be a little kid sometimes too. Just be super dramatic about losing an airplane, a paper airplane race. He deserves it.
Fair. All right, well, with that being said, that's everything that we got for this week. So please go ahead and give us a like here on, if you're listening on YouTube. If you're on YouTube as well, go ahead and give us a subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you get notified whenever we post or upload new videos. If you're on Spotify, give us a rating, if you will. Give us an honest rating, please. And go ahead and download the podcast. You can also follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Hashira Half Hour, or on X at Hashira Half. But that's everything that we got. So with that being said, umai.
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 Let's go.
Very good. All right.